All right, welcome back to Andersen Acres. We are again in the kitchen because we do love baking. Today we are actually going to make deep dish breadsticks. I know I've already done a breadstick recipe, but this one's a little bit different. So for the dough, you can actually use any dough. This is just my basic white dough, and the recipe will pop up on your screen if you're not quite sure how to make the bread dough. I will link to the directions in the description. So this is just basic white dough. You could use a pizza dough, you could use a whole wheat, you could use an herbed dough, you could even use a focaccia type dough. I'm just using basic white dough. So before we start messing with our dough, after it's completed its first rise, remember when you're doing stuff with doughs, you almost always want it to complete its first rise. So this has. Now we want to prep our pan because we're going to make deep dish breadsticks. So what we need to do is coat this. I have a mixture of oil here. This is a mixture of half olive oil and half vegetable oil. If you use straight olive oil, you're going to have a little bit of a problem. You could burn because olive oil actually flashes at a really low temperature. If you mix it, you have less of a problem. So this is, about 4 tablespoons of olive oil and 4 tablespoons of vegetable oil. And we're just going to coat the pan. Okay, that's it. We're just going to coat our pan. I use a glass pan. I love my glass pans. You can use any pan you like. I also will use a silicone pan sometimes. Now, the oil is not just because you don't want it to stick. The oil is also because you want them to be deep dish. And for deep dish, you do need oil. So, oil on there. You're going to save the oil for later. Okay, you're not going to use all your oil. I just don't like to run out. So you can probably do it with 2 tablespoons of olive and 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil. Now you're going to take, about 1.5 tablespoons, 2 tablespoons of cornmeal, and just sprinkle. Just gives the bottom of the breadsticks a nice crunch. So you can use, don't use too much cornmeal. You don't want to have your breadsticks swimming in cornmeal, just a dusting, about a tablespoon, tablespoon and a half, maybe 2 tablespoons at the most. So now your pan is prepped. You're going to take your dough. So we're going to move our pan out of the way for a minute. And we're going to take our dough. We want our dough to be kind of rectangular, like that pan. Now remember, you are going to rise your dough. You're going to let it sit to rise. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but it does have to be in a rectangle because I'm using a rectangular pan. If you want really thick breadsticks, I suppose you could use a smaller pan, but that would make really, really thick breadsticks. Okay, and they will rise. Don't forget that they do rise significantly as you wait. And then they rise a little bit more in the oven. So I'm definitely not going to use a smaller cake pan. I like to use a larger one. Cake pan, casserole dish, whatever you have. It's not really that specific. So then you're going to take your dough. You can let it relax for a minute if you like. I'm not going to. But you can take your dough and just pop it right in there. Now it's in. Give it a press. And you're literally just going to leave it now. Okay, I put it in the microwave to rise. You can just put a damp tea towel over top. You're just going to ignore it for about an hour, hour and a half till it fills into the pan and it puffs up a little bit. So we'll come back and check on it about an hour or so. All right, so our dough has risen up nice and poofy, looking good. Now we want to do our topping because you don't want to just bake this. So we're going to do our topping, then we'll slice it into breadsticks. You're going to take the oil you had earlier, so your olive oil, vegetable oil mix, and just brush it on the top. It's okay if your dough doesn't fill all the way to the corners, it's not a big deal. So we're just going to brush the top with some oil. Don't dump it on there because then it'll be overwhelmed in oil. You don't want it swimming. You just want to crisp up the top and sides. Remember, there's already oil underneath and a little bit of cornmeal, so you don't have to worry about the bottom not getting crisp enough. While you're doing this, you want to preheat your oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, you want this to get nice and crisp. So now we're going to add some herbs. I'm going to start with some salt. I'm just going to use my salt shaker. So I'm using Himalayan salt. You do this to taste. So how much salt do you want? I put about, maybe for salt, there's less than half a teaspoon on the top when all is said and done. But you do want some salt, so don't overdo it on the salt. Your breadsticks are going to be really salty. Next, I'm going to add a little bit of black pepper. Not a ton. You don't want too much pepper on your breadsticks, but black pepper is a nice spice. Gives things a nice taste. So probably about 1/8 of a teaspoon, not very much. Next, you want garlic. I use garlic powder. This is going to be crazy amount of garlic because I love garlic, but you don't have to go as much as I am. I'm probably putting a full teaspoon on here. I'm dumping quite a bit. I love garlic. You don't have to use that much garlic. Another good seasoning, oregano. Okay, so I'm going to shake quite a bit of oregano on, not as much as the garlic. Garlic I go nuts for, but quite a bit of oregano on. Again, you're doing this to taste. And if you want to use a different spice, you can too. So if you don't like oregano, you might do basil. Some people like sage. I'm going to do some parsley as well. So probably about a teaspoon of parsley. You're just going to take it in your fingers, get parsley on there. Makes for a nice topping. Now we're going to want Parmesan cheese. You can do as much or as little again as you like. I'm not going to do a ton today because the kid who loves Parmesan isn't here. So I'm just going to, I'm probably using a teaspoon instead of the sometimes 1/8 of a cup I end up using for him. So a little bit of Parmesan. You can do as much as you like though. If you want more Parmesan than that, you're fine. Now you'll notice we haven't made breadsticks. This is just a hunk of dough. So now we're going to want to slice it into breadsticks. We're going to use this. I always use this. If you've seen my other videos, you've seen me use this before. We're going to dip it in water. And we're just going to slice down the middle, push all the way down. Okay? And then you're going to decide, I'm probably going to slice down the middle again here. And after I do 2, I wet my blade again just because I don't want it sticking. Okay, so I'm going here. And then here you get to decide whether you want to do in half or whether you want to do in thirds. Now I'm going to do in thirds. Okay, I'm just going to try this again. Now this is just basically scoring. Okay, and it's deflating it a little bit, which is also actually a good thing because then they're not quite so gigantic. This is just giving you a place to separate the breadsticks when you're done. So remember, your oven is currently at 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay? That's what you want. You want your oven nice and warm. Actually, you want your oven quite hot for these. They're going to go in for about 25 to 30 minutes. Check them at 25 minutes to see how cooked they are. And we'll come back when these are done. And it's been 25 minutes and our deep dish breadsticks are looking fantastic. You can just rip them right off the end. They are boiling hot. And that's how they look. They're a lot of fun, great for pasta night, great for pizza night. Basically, they're great for whenever. So thanks for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed making deep dish breadsticks and hopefully you'll try this yourself at home. If you'd like to see more of our videos, please like and subscribe so that we can keep baking for you. See you tomorrow.